For 40 years, they built him a throne. America's doctor. A scientific saint. The media called him the sexiest man alive during the pandemic. It was all a lie. A carefully constructed facade to hide one of the most prolific medical monsters in modern history. Anthony Fauci didn't just make mistakes. He presided over a regime of torture, human experimentation, and mass death. And now, with President Trump and Health Secretary RFK Jr. in power, the entire rotten edifice is collapsing. Fauci's power came from the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases. For decades, armed with a budget of billions, he was an unaccountable monarch of American medicine. He used that power not to heal, but to experiment. To use human beings, especially the most vulnerable, as lab rats. His reign began not with COVID, but with a silent Holocaust on American soil, 50 years back. In 1976, a single soldier died from swine flu at Fort Dix. The pandemic never came, but a young, ambitious Anthony Fauci saw an opportunity. He helped unleash a wave of panic that led to a mass vaccination campaign. The result: a rushed, dangerous vaccine was forced on the public. It caused over 450 cases of crippling Guillain-Barré syndrome, and at least 25 deaths. This was the test run. The formula was proven. Find a threat, no matter how small. Amplify it through fear. Bypass all safety protocols. And demand absolute power to push a deadly solution. 1976 was the blueprint. COVID was the finished weapon. During the height of the AIDS crisis, Fauci personally went into gay bathhouses in New York and San Francisco to promote the drug AZT. He presented it as their only hope, despite knowing its brutal toxicity, and the fact that the clinical trials were shamelessly rigged. The initially approved dosage of 1,500 milligrams was literally fatal. AZT killed over 100,000 gay men before the protocol was finally changed. These men didn't die from AIDS. They died from the treatment. Their suffering was immense, deaths marked by agonizing organ failure, and a complete collapse of the body. Despite this catastrophic toll, there has been no protests against him from the LGBT community, or backlash from the mainstream media. In the 1990s and early 2000s, Anthony Fauci oversaw a series of clinical trials that can only be described as crimes against humanity. The subjects? Foster children, mostly Black and Latino orphans, the most voiceless, powerless humans in America. As reported by brave journalists like Liam Sheff, and confirmed by internal documents, these children were used as guinea pigs for toxic experimental AIDS drugs. The protocols were barbaric. They were pumped with high-dose drugs meant for adults. They suffered organ failure, violent seizures, and developed open, weeping wounds. Those who resisted the foul-tasting medications had feeding tubes forcibly inserted down their throats to ensure compliance. At least 85 kids died as part of these experiments. Every single one who managed to stay alive were traumatized for life. These children were buried under an AstroTurf pit in New York, their lives extinguished by experimental drugs, masquerading as treatments. This was state-sanctioned torture. Fauci knew, since he was the one who funded it. That's right, he authorized it. And when a crisis didn't appear, Fauci's system would benefit from one that did. The 2001 anthrax attacks, which involved letters containing weapons-grade anthrax, terrorizing a post-9/11 America. As investigators like Whitney Webb and Francis Boyle have proven, the strain was traceable to U.S. biodefense labs. The attacks created a panic. And who was the biggest beneficiary? That's right, it was Anthony Fauci. The attacks triggered a $60 billion flood of biodefense cash, directly into Fauci's lap. It was the perfect business model. A threat emerges from the very system he oversaw. And he was rewarded with more power, more money, and more control. Terror was the product, and Fauci was the salesman. But his masterpiece of death was COVID. This was the moment his 4 decades of unaccountable power culminated in a global execution protocol. Fauci, along with the CDC and the WHO, designed the playbook that killed millions. Let's check how. Number 1. He actively suppressed safe, effective treatments like ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine, which had success rates over 70% in early treatment. Instead, he promoted remdesivir, which resulted in a staggering 45% mortality rate among hospitalized patients. This was a scandal that shocked frontline doctors who witnessed the suffering. Number 2. He engineered the virus in a lab. In 2014, the Obama administration imposed a moratorium on U.S. funding for gain-of-function research, experiments that make viruses more infectious or deadly, citing extreme risks. Fauci funneled millions to the EcoHealth Alliance and the Wuhan Institute of Virology for this exact type of research. When questioned by Senator Rand Paul, Fauci lied under oath about it. This is not a theory. It is a documented fact. When accusations arose, Fauci conveniently changed the definition of gain-of-function research to escape accountability. Number 3. He knew the vaccines were deadly. The Biden administration had the data on myocarditis and severe adverse events in February 2021. They sat on it until June. Why? To get as many shots into arms as possible before the truth could get out. They knew children were dying, and they pushed the shot anyway. This is not negligence. This is mass murder. At a Georgetown University event in 2017, Anthony Fauci made a stunningly specific public prediction. He stated that the Trump administration would undoubtedly face a surprise outbreak of an infectious disease during its term. I think by now, you understand why some people call it the plandemic. Fauci didn't just control drugs and viruses. He controlled the very language of science itself. His playbook was always the same: destroy dissent. In the 1980s, renowned virologist Peter Duesberg challenged the AIDS orthodoxy and the toxicity of AZT. Fauci didn't debate him. He destroyed him. Duesberg was defunded, excommunicated, and his career was erased. This was the model. For 40 years, Fauci built a scientific priesthood. If you questioned the god of the official narrative, you were branded a heretic. Your funding was cut. Your reputation was smeared. Your voice was silenced. This is why during COVID, any doctor offering early treatment was censored and deplatformed and hunted by medical boards. Fauci had spent a lifetime perfecting the science of silencing science. Why? Why would a man do this? The answer is as old as time. Power and money. Fauci didn't just serve the system. He was the system. A key node in the medical-industrial deep state complex. He holds patents on the very treatments he mandated. His budget was a black hole of billions, with zero oversight. He was the leading salesman for Big Pharma, granting them indemnity from lawsuits, while forcing their products onto the entire planet. He wasn't a doctor. He was a drug dealer. The most powerful drug dealer in human history. And the product was death. Fauci's empire was never just American. It was global. He was a key architect of PEPFAR, a program that poured billions into Africa. But as researchers like James Corbett have exposed, this program was a Trojan horse. Under the guise of AIDS relief, it often funneled money to organizations, pushing abortion, sterilization, and dangerous population control policies on the developing world. Fauci was building a global biosecurity state, with himself and his allies at the World Health Organization at the helm. His goal was never health. It was control. The power to lock down nations, mandate drugs, and dictate policy to the entire planet, under the permanent emergency of a pandemic. For 40 years, Anthony Fauci operated with total immunity, protected by the media, worshipped by politicians, and shielded by a bureaucratic deep state. That immunity ends now. The Trump administration has made this clear, starting with the revocation of his state-sponsored security. Fauci's actions can only be compared to one other evil man from history. He is indeed the Joseph Mengele of our age, a man who turned human experimentation into public policy, who sanctified atrocity as scientific inquiry, and who viewed human suffering not as a tragedy to be prevented, but as data to be collected by a system that rewarded it. Fauci wasn't just a bumbling bureaucrat or a mere liar. He was a calculating, power-hungry systems architect who, for half a century, worked to transform public health into the most powerful mechanism of social and global control ever devised. He is the embodiment of the deep state in a white lab coat,